What's up, y'all? Welcome back. Welcome back. We're talking about the last three fictional books that Miss Toni Morrison wrote. Let's get into it. Okay. I'm going in the order that I read them in, which is the order of publication. So we're going to start with A Mercy. Let's start with this. This book, like so many other of Toni Morrison's books, is like written like a stream of consciousness. You switch narrators, you don't really know who's talking when at first, but the more you read it, the more you kind of understand each person's distinct voice. Yeah, so those alternating POVs, you kind of understand who starts to speak when and when another person is kind of coming onto the scene to speak. So this book is set in the 1680s. It involves the slave trade. I've said this with every single Toni Morrison book that I've read. This one's no different. You get those characters that you will not forget. You get Jacob, who is a trader. Florence, who is a slave girl that was part payment to Jacob. Lena, which is an older servant. So many other things. And then you get these deeper themes of loss, of trying to fit in, of seeking love and acceptance. One thing I did like about this book, and you can get this in any other Toni Morrison book, but it's very deep, like biblical parallels in here. It's full of theology. Yeah, and it's so much symbolism in this. This one, I'm trying to think back, like every book has some biblical parallels and has theology like weaved into it. But I felt like when I was reading this, it was really heavy handed on like the biblical parallels. And because it was specifically talking about the main character's faith and what that played in her life, and then the faith around the people that she lived with. So I feel like it was a little more heavy handed in this, which I didn't mind. I'm just saying that like it jumped out of the page a little bit more for me. But yeah, it really covered like longing. Like so many of her other books, I feel like she stayed true to that. It covered the longing for love, the longing for material things, um, the longing for peace. And in this book in particular, the longing for a savior. So, and it was a short book. I actually think, let me see. There's only 167 pages, which is short for, Toni Morrison's books. I'm going to read, I haven't done this in any other one, but I'm going to actually read a synopsis of A Mercy. Just because I feel like I kind of want to give you a little backstory, but I'm so like nervous to give a spoiler. So I'm just going to read what the synopsis is so you can kind of see what the blurb is for this book. A powerful tragedy distilled into a jewel of masterpiece by the Nobel Prize-winning author of Beloved, and almost like a prelude to that story set 2 centuries earlier. In the 1680s, the slave trade was still in its infancy. In the Americas, religious and class divisions, prejudice and oppression were rife, providing the fertile soil in which slavery and race hatred were planted and took root. Jacob is an Anglo-Dutch trader and adventurer with a small holding in the harsh north. Despite his distaste for dealing in flesh, he takes a small slave girl in part payment for a bad debt from a plantation owner in Catholic Maryland. This is Florence, with the hands of a slave and the feet of a Portuguese lady. Florence looks for love, first from Lena, an older servant woman at her new master's house, but later in the handsome blacksmith, an African who was never enslaved. There are other voices, Lena, whose tribe was decimated by smallpox, their mistress, Rebecca, herself a victim of religious intolerance back in England, Sorrow, a strange girl who spent her early years at sea, and finally the devastating voice of Florence's mother. A Mercy reveals what lies beneath the surface of slavery, but at its heart, it is the ambivalent, disturbing story of a mother who casts off her daughter in order to save her, and a daughter who may never exercise that abandonment. Acts of mercy may have been unforeseen consequences. I really So like this synopsis said, there is a character named Sorrow, and Sorrow really resonated with me for a few reasons. I'm now saying I can't say one thing because it's probably a spoiler, but like I said, she was a literal character in the story, but she also represented, like, she was also a metaphor or symbolism too, just for, again, that longing. For this book, like other books of hers, deals with like the loss of family, the loss of children, the loss of community. Sorrow, to me, even including her name, was a representation of what was lost and what there is left to be gained. So yeah, this book, it was good. It was short, it was sweet. Like every other one of her books, it was traumatic, but you know, that's what you get. Great writing, lyrical prose. She's just Toni Morrison is just like a master storyteller, and you just can't deny that. You might not like the books, you might not like the subject matter, but you can't say she don't be writing. The themes are deep and the books are good. Let's move on to number 2. Next, we have Home. Frank Money. We got Home. Home is set in the aftermath of the Korean War. And this book, which I'll say about both of these books, Home and God Bless the Child, God Help the Child. This was the first book of hers that I read where I felt like it was easy to follow. It was pretty straightforward. It wasn't like a whole lot of stories within a story, within a story, within a story. I never had to go back and reread pages in either of these books. It was, now the subject matter, let's not confuse this. The subject matter is not easy. I'm just saying the way it was written was easy to follow. The other books, it took a lot more like brain power for me to kind of get through. Not necessarily with Home or God Help the Child. Subject matter is still hard. This dealt with PTSD. It dealt with Frank Money, who was a war veteran who came back home. What that looks like, that support or lack thereof. Dealt with his sister, and the situation she was in was wild. It dealt with addiction. It dealt with pain. It dealt with abuse. It dealt with, I'll be trying not to get spoilers. It just dealt, the subject matter, they're not easy, but it was easy to read and easy to follow. So Frank Money, the main character, he joins the war because he wants to escape his small hometown. He ain't the only one, okay? Anyways, he joins the war because he wants to escape his small town. Does not know what that looks like, does not know what that means. This raises a lot of questions about war and what that looks like for the people, the actual soldiers that go into it. But yeah, when he went off to the war, he left behind his little sister. Her name is C. Anyways, after the war, so Frank goes to the war, leaves behind C. After the war, he comes back and has to travel down to Georgia. C is established and living her own life. What she has left at this point in the story is her memories of her brother and what, you know how people kind of get stuck in time, like stuck in that moment in your memory. So she has that memory of her brother, and he knows in his head he has to go rescue his sister. Well, their hometown is full of secrets and, you know, hometown stuff. Frank, when he gets there, he learns essentially what it means to become a man or be a man. Something that he thought he had to leave home to find out. He really, when he got back there, that's when everything started unfolding for him. He's dealing with how to manage relationships. He's dealing with the things that he's done in his past, the person that he's become. And then you got C, on the other hand, who is seeing her brother now after all this time and realizing the idea that she had of him was not really him. And he has a different place in her life now. And now it's kind of like a hope of a promise of hope at the end of it. But that was really interesting to me. And the way it was crafted was so good. Again, the subject matter is not easy, but it was easier to read than her other books to me. So yeah, deals with regret, coping, like I said, PTSD, veterans, home. What is home? Like, it deals with that. Like, is your hometown your home? Is your home your family? Is your home where you learn to be a man? Is your home where you came of age? Like, what does that mean? Is it a place? Is it eternal? You know, so this is a really good book. I enjoyed it. This wasn't that long either, huh? 145 pages. It talked about, it's just, it has a lot of, all of her books are good conversation starters because you could take them in so many different directions. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I actually enjoyed this more than I thought I would. Not saying I thought I wouldn't like it, but like, I try to keep my head down and read, but I've seen people who say that they didn't really like her last three fictional books like that. So I was expecting to just think they were okay. I genuinely enjoyed Home, so it's that. And then lastly, we have God Help the Child. Yeah, this is the last fictional book from her. This book, all of them was so triggering, but all of them were. Every one of her books are triggering. This one was super triggering. It on the surface, it seems like the main thing that the book is about is colorism, because the main character, whose name is Bride, or Lula Ann, who then changes her name to Bride, is a really, really dark skinned girl. They actually call her blue black. And her skin, when she was a child, was seen as like something that her mom, she was treated so badly, and her mom almost detested her because her mama was like super, super light skinned, and her daddy, her birth dad. And so when she came out super dark skinned, her mom, even the way she raised her, was just so wrong. So you got, like, you would think that the whole book is kind of like about colorism, but it goes deeper into that because later on in life, her skin color was used and viewed differently, but still, even underneath that, you still kind of got those same underlying, like, discriminatory practices she had experienced. So the main character, what I liked about this book is the main character is somebody that you can empathize with, you feel for her, but she also did her own fair share of stuff too. And then you could kind of look back and see, like, what did that stem from? Or like, this is why she did this, and kind of like reverse engineer her actions. It's Toni Morrison's only book that's set in the present day. Yeah, so instead of like directly post slavery or the 1600s and stuff like that, this is actually set in the 2000s. So yeah, like I said, it's about colorism heavy, it's about addiction heavy, it's about abuse heavy, child abuse heavy, childhood trauma and dealing and coping and facing that heavy, disappointment in relationships, especially that mother-daughter relationship. Something that I really appreciated from this book is you kind of get to see the child who, from the perspective of her mom relationship with her. So you got the main character, Bride, and you're seeing like the relationship she has with her mom, why her mom did what she did. And then you kind of get to hear her mom's perspective. But then you get Bride, who then is transitioning from just a daughter to then she will become a mother too. And so you kind of get to see like this progression of the timeline, which I think is cool because it kind of helps everything come full circle. And you're seeing the mom in real time come to terms with the type of mom she is, trying to understand the effect that she might have had on her kids. And everything involved with that, for what that's worth. So that was pretty cool to see. Then you had other characters. So the mom's name is Lula May. The daughter is Lula Ann, who changed her name to Bride. You got her dad, Lewis, Sophia, Raisin, Booker, Rain. Like, all of these characters will leave a lasting impression. Yeah, so this was good. Just like Home, like I mentioned before, it also reads easy. I never had to go back and reread a page. I didn't get lost in the story. It was very clear. And actually, yeah, in both of these books, they weren't written like stream of conscious, like I said about A Mercy and some other Toni Morrison books. These weren't written like that. It was clear who was speaking. It was straightforward. Yeah, it was that, like, you still have the same lyrical prose. You still have like great storytelling, similes, metaphors, symbolism. You have all of that in these books. Very descriptive, but they're not written in that stream of consciousness like some of the other books that I've read from Toni Morrison. So I read them quicker than I did some of the other ones. It wasn't a struggle for real because I can kind of just get through them, you know. But yeah, these are the last 3 books in her fictional catalog. All that's left after this is to do a total video of all of the books that I read. It's 12 of them. What my thoughts are. I'm gonna try to tier rank them. I don't know. It's so hard. Like, I'm still going through my notes and kind of thinking about which books resonated with me the most, which books I can appreciate for the creative storytelling more, which ones were more experimental with her storytelling and some of the devices she used. So I'm interested to see, once I get everything there and I can sit down, what are my final thoughts? You know, I know it's been a journey. It's been a ride. I've enjoyed it, and I'm glad to be sharing it with y'all. If you read these 3, what did you think? Because I haven't heard bad reviews, but I've heard people say, I've never heard people say that any of these are their favorite book from Toni Morrison. So I'm interested. If one of these books is your favorite, which one is it? If you've read any of these, what you think about them. That's it for me. I'm checking out. See y'all on the next one.